Hi everyone, my name is Federico Quintero and welcome to my docu-series where I interview entrepreneurs around me and learn about what they do, how they got to where they are today, and life lessons that they learned along the way. And I hope you learned as much as I did while interviewing these entrepreneurs, and I hope you enjoy. Hi Riley, how are you?
Hello, Federico. Good. How are you today?
Welcome to my interview where I ask entrepreneurs around me about what they do and how they got to where they are today. So first of all, can you tell me a little bit about what you do and your name?
Sure. My name is Bradley McGavin. I previously was an attorney, but I recently had a career change where I elected to purchase a going concern, a business that was already established. And so now I am the sole proprietor of that business.
And how and why did you get into this business?
So for approximately 25 years, I was a practicing attorney. I worked my way all the way up to being general counsel of a large corporation that was in women's fashion. Unfortunately, my wife passed away approximately 7 years ago, and I continued to practice for approximately 2 years after that, but it became necessary for me to start looking for new opportunities where I could gain a little bit more control over my life and that were closer to my home. So at that time, I quit my job altogether and focused for approximately 2 years on identifying a business that met all of my financial needs and my commute requirement. And I finally found something shortly after COVID ended, and the main part of COVID ended, and been working on getting that business established ever since.
So about how long have you been?
I've owned the business now for 2 years. For the first month to 2 months, I had a very successful run, but unfortunately, I lost my lease at that time. And for the last year, I have been working with the city on getting all of my permits again, which has been an onerous task and a very costly task. But I just recently completed all of my construction. Will be able to begin again. So I'll be launching again within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
And I would have to assume that you had to study to get into this field of work, right?
So yes and no. For my legal career, there was extensive studying. So that required obviously 4 years of an undergraduate degree and 3 years of law school, and then passing the bar exam in the state of California. After that, there's continuing legal education that you have to participate in once every 3 years. To meet all of your requirements. So there was extensive education for law. The thing that's interesting is for my present business, there isn't any sort of licensing or education that's required. The actual process is actually quite simple. However, I found that my legal education has assisted me in numerous aspects of being an entrepreneur, most certainly with all of the contracts that I need to negotiate and draft. But even just something as simple as how to analyze problems and how to interact with people on a professional level, the training has been invaluable. So I can't say that at this point my legal education hasn't been a benefit to me any longer. It's been mostly a benefit and in some ways a hindrance to me. Yes.
And would you consider this to be your dream job or dream career?
That's an interesting question because I don't know that there is something entirely like a dream career, at least not in my experience. I think with the exception of things maybe in the entertainment field, sports, that those are probably what people would consider to be dream careers. For me, I had a position in law that many people, when they start law school, would consider a dream job, being the leader, the head of a large legal department, being able to manage other attorneys, having the salary that comes with that. That's what many people would consider to be a dream job. For me, it was really kind of a widget. And I've found, and even with my current business, I can't really say that it's a dream job. But what I found for the most things in life, you have to just select something, become excellent at it, and find ways to find. I lost my train of thought on this one, but to find your own sense of fulfillment in whatever you select.
Mm. Yeah, I really like that answer because usually with other entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, they either gave yes or no. But I really liked your answer that there isn't there isn't really such thing as a dream job.
No, I don't think so. I think you can find fulfillment in whatever you choose to do in life. It's similar in many walks, many things that you can find in life. You can elect to find the good or the bad in anything. And it's not to say that I'm not passionate about what I do. I think you have to have passion for anything you're going to do in life, whether it be as an entrepreneur or an entertainer, a student, whatever you might be. You need to bring passion and excellence to that in order to be successful. But in terms of what most people would identify as a dream job, I simply define dream job as something that you can find fulfillment where you get to give back to society, and it provides a means to an ends of being able to be there for your family. That's what's most critical to me.
About how old were you when you first started working?
I started working at a pretty young age. I was 10. I actually came into a family. My mom got remarried, and her new husband had a very successful family business. I was in approximately the 4th grade, and that summer he came in on my first day of summer vacation and said, "I work, you work." And so that was it. I started working pretty much every day from that point forward. It's not that I didn't have some time off, but I had to go in 3 to 4 days a week, and it started off really basic with cleaning out trash cans and ashtrays and sweeping the floor and washing the windows. And over time, it graduated to being able to assist customers and even negotiating contracts.
So you first started working when you were 10 years old?
When I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And I worked all the way through. The first time I had any time off in my entire life where I wasn't working was when I elected to leave my job after my wife passed away. So I worked all the way through from that point every summer. And then I also worked for my stepfather the year in between when I graduated from college and the year that I started law school. I took 1 year off, and I worked that entire year with him.
And you mentioned how you worked for many periods of time. Would you mind telling me about how you find a balance between your life, your personal life, and your work?
That's been a complicated question for me, and it's probably one of the things I regret most. One of the only things I regret in my life is I have found that I've overworked at times, and that the only time I regretted that was, I don't know, I'm speaking a lot about my wife, but when she passed away, she told me that she wished she had had a little more time with me, that I was at work too often. So it's hard though. You start to find yourself in a position where if you're a competitive person, there's a competitive drive to be the best that you can be at work. And as a lawyer, that usually equated to the amount of hours that you could put in, both because there's such a thing as a billable hour, so that makes the law firm happier with you if you're billing a lot. But simply, I never found that I was the most intelligent lawyer. I was the hardest worker. I would be the most prepared. I would know every case. I would know every detail of any aspect of anything I was working on. And that's how I succeeded. That's how I won. And that's what made me good. So in order to do that, though, that required an enormous time commitment. So being in the office until 1 or 2 in the morning was not unusual, and then being back the next day by 6 or 7 in the morning, that was not atypical. So now that I'm an entrepreneur, I've found that the challenge is a little bit different for me. I have a lot more control over my time. I can pick and choose when I need to arrive. There's no boss to answer to. I only have to answer to myself. But in light of that, I find that I have to be a little bit more disciplined for my work. I can't always just prioritize my daughter. And so that's been really more of the challenge at this point. I want to give her as much time as I possibly can. But at the same time, in order to have a successful business, it requires a significant amount of attention from me.
And I hope you don't mind me asking, but how did you handle obstacles like the loss of your wife and like bounce back from such a sad and difficult moment in your life?
Are you talking about personally or professionally or both?
Both.
Both. So personally, I struggled with it quite a bit. I kept practicing for about 2 years after she died. The first year, I was almost numb. Work actually helped me to escape from everything that was going on. The second year, I thought I was doing pretty well. I felt relatively happy. I was in the gym regularly exercising. I felt like I was getting my life back together again. And then something happened where I ran into a lot of depression. I was having trouble keeping myself motivated, especially for work. I could not focus at work. I would sit there at my desk sometimes for an hour and then realize I've just been sitting here staring at the screen. So I knew there was something wrong with me. That was very atypical for me. And I had to seek out psychological help. I saw a psychiatrist for a period of time. I learned to engage in different breathing exercises to control the depression and the stress. And personally, I really found that trying to stay grounded and find what brought me peace was what was critical. I knew my wife wouldn't want me just to flounder in my life, to be sad. So I found peace and happiness through my daughter and through traveling again. We started to travel a bit because I hadn't been able to travel for years while my wife was sick.
I'm so sorry about the loss of your wife.
Thank you.
And since you started working to now, have you had any influences or mentors that you could, talk to or look up to?
There have been several mentors and people who have influenced me. The first one most certainly was my stepfather. Like I said, he was not a present father, although I didn't really expect that out of him. But with respect to how he was as a businessman, he was impeccable. He knew, I think one of the most critical things to being successful in business is to know your product and to be very confident in yourself. And he possessed both of those characteristics. He also taught me a lot about knowing who my customer base is. That's been very important to me now because I've had such a dramatic shift in my career where previously I was dealing mostly in white collar corporate America, and you deal with a lot of people who have fancy degrees and are accustomed to meeting in big boardrooms and very buttoned down suit and tie environment. And now I have moved back into more of a blue collar world. And what I found is interesting, and my stepfather always taught me this, is just because somebody doesn't have a college education, you can't judge them on that, judge their intellect on that. And I found that to be very true. I've met people that are incredibly savvy businessmen who do not have MBAs. And I have to remember, though, that some people don't necessarily trust people with college degrees. They don't perceive it the same way that people in corporate America do. So I have to learn to kind of scale back a little bit the corporate side of me and, in all honesty, be a little bit more of a real person, allow my personality to come through, connect more with people on a personal level than I ever would in corporate America, where asking certain questions may not be politically correct or may not be appropriate, but in a real world setting where you're trying to develop a relationship with somebody, getting to know a little bit more about them on a true personal level is more critical. And I learned all of those sorts of things from my stepfather. In corporate America, I had really two mentors that were extremely helpful. One at the first law firm I worked for, who really took me under his wing and spent a lot of time teaching me in a way that you called it like basically throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. The first time I ever went to court, I didn't even know where to stand. I didn't know what to say. He's like, just go, you'll figure it out. I'm like, okay. But the thing was, there were certain things of that where you need to be put in a position where you have to learn to struggle. You have to learn how to come through a situation where maybe you don't have all the answers and to keep your composure. So he knew what he was doing the way he trained me, but behind the scenes, he would always prepare me for every deposition, for every trial, with almost everything that I needed in order to be successful. So he was a great influence for me. And then when I worked at the women's fashion company, my boss was the CFO of the company. And she really provided me with a lot of interesting perspective, especially a female perspective, of what it took to be successful in corporate America. And the different sorts of things that she had to encounter that I never really had much considered, being a male coming up through corporate America. But she really helped me navigate and learn how to navigate all the politics that go along with being a high-level employee within an organization like that.
And do you feel like all of these mentors and influences have changed you as a person?
They most definitely have. I think when I began my career, I was a little bit arrogant. It's tough to admit now, but there are things that I think back on that I did that are a little bit embarrassing to me. But I had to learn how to how to become confident without being arrogant, how to be forceful without being mean, and without being argumentative, which isn't always easy as a lawyer when I was doing that. But all of these things have been really beneficial now that I've moved away from law, which is very much a confrontational career, into something where I'm not in a zero-sum game, where I'm in a company where everybody's trying to get something that makes them happy. I'm delivering a product that makes someone happy. I'm getting money that makes me happy. I'm able to take care of my employees. That provides great satisfaction to me. But law, everything's a zero-sum game. There's a winner and a loser. There's not winners. If I do everything right now, there's not a winner and a loser.
Now, right now, do you feel like you are a successful businessman? And if not, what is your definition of success?
Yes, and it's interesting. If I went by my original definition of what being a successful businessman is, I would not consider myself successful at this moment. And that's because I would say when I started, the only goal was to make as much money as I possibly could. And I was exclusively focused on that. And as I talked about earlier in our conversation, I lost a lot of time with family because of being so focused on financial rewards. I learned the hard way that for me, success in business now is defined as the ability to take care of my family. And that also means not just financially, but it means with my own time. So my answer to the question now would be I'm not successful by my initial definition, but by my current definition of success, I do feel very successful because I've been able to be the father that I want to be to my daughter. I've helped her to go through a very difficult time in her life, losing her mom, in a way that she's a happy, fulfilled young girl. And I've been able to accomplish all of that because of the success that I've had at work and my ability to give this time of myself, in addition to taking care of everybody financially within my family. Maybe not the level that I would have considered successful before, but certainly at a level that's sufficient that everybody's well cared for.
And in moments where you feel stress and anxiety, what motivates you to keep going?
I think the greatest motivation for me is competition. So I hate to lose. But on the personal level, like if I'm looking within myself, what drives me, it really boils down to competition. It started with sport when I was young. I just can't lose. So I will keep driving until I find success. But my other motivations in terms of external motivation, I think a lot about, the things my wife asked of me. I think a lot about my daughter, and those are the other things that just really keep me going. And also my employees. They're an extension of my family, or I want to see them succeed as well.
How do you envision the future of your business?
My business is growing very dramatically right now. It's part of the reason why I selected it. So my stepfather's business was in the paint industry, and it's a highly regulated industry. And I thought about going back into that because I have so much experience with it. However, I did not want to deal with all of the regulation that goes into paint. So I looked for an equivalent to that, and that's how I located the powder coating business that I'm in now. That's a more environmentally friendly version of paint that's much more durable and provides more opportunity for me to market to an audience of potential clients that isn't quite as tapped into as what the paint industry might be. So there's a lot of barriers to entry in this business, mostly with respect to the permits. The machinery is not inexpensive to purchase, so it takes quite a bit to get started. And so those are really the things that drove me to this particular business at this time. And where I see it going in the future, the business that I purchased was already existing. They did a lot of business with small jobbers, people doing, a couple tables here and there, or one car, or something of that nature. I've really been focusing on developing more of the contracts with larger entities, such as machine shops with cities, with governments, things of that nature, that can provide me with a large volume of business rather than focusing on just individual projects. I'm still happy to do all of that work while I get off the ground, but eventually I'll come to a point where these contracts with larger potential clients will consume all of my time.
And my final question for you now is, what would you say to the 13-year-old you and other 13-year-olds starting their own business?
So I think the most critical thing to being successful as an entrepreneur is to have confidence and to know your product. In addition to that, I think it's really important to build your network when you're younger. So once you're in business, your network becomes critical to developing new contacts, to developing business with even the people that you already know. Once you get to that point, though, and you're able to leverage those contacts that you have, you truly need to know your product and to be an expert in that area, whatever it might be, and then have the confidence to go ahead and make that a success.
Well, thank you, Bradley, for coming here today. I loved all of your answers.
Well, thank you, Federico. I appreciate the opportunity.
I thought you were extremely meaningful in everything that you said, and I'm so sorry about the loss of your wife.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching my interview, and if you enjoyed what you watched, make sure to like and subscribe if you want more. Bye, and see you next time.